friends, welcome back, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Stacy and I am the Chapter Conundrum. And in today's video, I want to talk to y'all about my April TBR. And April is a little bit different reading wise for me because we host Battle of the Bands 5, and this round is going to be Captain's Choice, meaning that this round the prompts are based on some of the captain's favorite songs, which is fun. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, there is definitely still time to join the readathon. You don't have to have done any of the previous rounds to fully enjoy this. I will go ahead and link the announcement video we put up over on Jake's channel, my husband, the Bookish Drummer, and you can find out all the rules and details there. And usually I would kind of wait a little bit later in the month to post my TBR for the following month, but since we are hosting the readathon, I thought it would be fun to kind of put this out a little bit earlier and maybe give you guys some additional short book ideas that fit the readathon prompts. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into what I plan to read next month in April. So I have planned a book for all 20 prompts. I have yet to have a round where I haven't finished all 20. So I'm hoping that I can manage it again this time, but we shall see. I may end up changing some of my plan to fit in some shorter books here and there, but this is what I am thinking at this point. So prompt 1 is When You Were Young by The Killers, and this is to read a captain's childhood or teenage fave. So we have an entire spreadsheet with a list of all the faves, and any book in any of the listed series can count, but I would like to revisit one of my faves that is on there, and that would be Freak the Mighty. This is a fun middle grade book. I remember my 6th grade teacher reading aloud to the class, and I know certain aspects of it are sort of loosely based around the King Arthur legend, but yeah, I remember loving this as like a 11 or 12-year-old or however old I was in 6th grade, and I would like to revisit it as an adult. So prompt 2 is Bad Desire by Noah Gunderson, and this is to read a book with a morally gray or villainous main character. And there's definitely a lot of dark fantasy I love that has morally gray characters, but I wanted to kind of choose something a little bit easier to sink my teeth into for the readathon, and I decided to try out Wretched by Emily McIntyre. This is the 3rd book in the Never After series, and essentially these are like fairy tale reimaginings, and definitely like all the main characters have had some things so far that make them very morally gray or even just villainous. So I have a feeling that this one will be no different. And this was on my self-destruct TBR for this year, so I felt like this is a good opportunity to slot this in and quit putting it off and pick it up and decide once and for all whether I am going to try the rest of the series or unhaul them. Prompt 3 is Signed, Sealed, Delivered, I'm Yours by Stevie Wonder, and that is to read a book that was gifted to you. And I decided I am kind of in a romance mood because I haven't been reading a ton of contemporary romance lately. And I figured this is a good opportunity to slot one in. So I decided to go with Dungeons and Drama by Christy? Yeah, by Christy Boyce. And this was gifted to me by my husband, Jake. And I think it was part of my Valentine's Day present from him, not this year, but the year before. So it's been a hot minute that this has been sitting on my shelves waiting for me, and I'm excited to try it out. So prompt 4 is Hide and Seek by Imogen Heap, and this is to read a book that was chosen for you by the Scavenger Hunt. And I went ahead and did the Scavenger Hunt before filming this, so I have my stack of books to show you guys how the progression went for me. So prompt 1 in the Scavenger Hunt is grab a book on your TBR or want to read. Well, that was easy. Blood Over Brighthaven has been one I've been meaning to get to forever. So from this, we have to find another book with a higher page count. So, okay, I grabbed a chunker that's also been on my mind, Goldfinch by Raven Kennedy, considerably chunkier. I'm pretty sure that this is like 500 and something, and this should be probably like 700-ish. I know it's higher anyway. So from this, we take the most prominent color on the cover and find another book that features the same color. And I would say here it's white. So I went with Valor by John Gwynne, another one that I've been meaning to get to very soon. From this, we take the 5th or last letter if there are less than 5, but there are 5, so that would be U in the title. And we find a book whose title ends with the letter U. So this was a little interesting, but I did remember we have You by Caroline Kepnes. From this, we take one of the author's initials and find another book by an author who shares one of those initials. So I needed either C or K. And I opted for C, and I grabbed The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. From here, you take another book in that same series. Luckily, I had the sequel here. And you take something on the cover of this one and find a book with that thing in the title. And so right away, I thought, okay, I can do sword. That should be easy. I read tons of fantasy. And I ended up remembering that I have an ebook I've been meaning to get to forever called The Swordsman's Lament. And I think this is like a shorter indie fantasy that I've heard really good things about from a few booktubers. So yeah, I decided to go for The Swordsman's Lament for this prompt. So prompt 5 is New York State of Mind by Billy Joel. And this is to read a book set in a big city. And one that I have been meaning to try is Stepping Off by Jordan Sonnenblick. So usually he writes a bit more towards middle grade, but this is his newest release and it's more towards young adult. And my favorites from him so far have been kind of like his older ones or his ones that veer a little more YA because they go in depth a little bit more emotionally into what the characters are dealing with. And so I have very high hopes for this. And I believe that part of it is set in New York City, so I figured, hey, perfect. So prompt 6 is One of These Days by Pink Floyd, and that is to pick up and read a book that you have been putting off. And I have one that has been on my want to read much longer than anything else, like more than a year longer than anything else left on there. And so I decided it's finally time. This was also on my self-destruct TBR this year, so definitely a good excuse to pick it up now as well, and it's kind of short. It's Half Broke Horses by Jeanette Wells, and basically I've been putting this off because I've read 2 of her books and just had mixed experiences. So I really enjoyed The Glass Castle, but really kind of didn't enjoy The Silver Star. However, The Glass Castle is really like the memoir of her own life, whereas The Silver Star is fictional. And this is more based on the life of her grandparents. So I'm hoping that in going back to kind of like true to life events that I'll enjoy her writing a lot more. But yeah, I've just been putting this one off because I remember my experience with Silver Star. But it is time. I'm going to finally get around to this one. Prompt 7 is Rotten Peaches by Elton John, and that is to read a book set in a dungeon, prison, or jail setting. And I thought, okay, well, this is perfect because our fantasy read-along on the Discord that starts in April is Dungeon Crawler Carl. So I will be picking that up and slotting that in here. And it definitely takes place in a dungeon, although I think in this scenario, it's probably going to be more of like a game instance kind of dungeon and not like a dungeon. But you know what? It's still a dungeon, just a different type. So we're going to go with it, and I am going to slot it here. Prompt 8 is Late in the Evening by Paul Simon, and that is to read a book with an evening-related word in the title. So like think things like night, star, moon, all that kind of stuff. And for this, I have decided to finally pick up and get around to Aurora by David, I don't know if it's Kopp or Coep. I will figure that out when I read this because my library has the audio. So I'll see how it's pronounced in the audiobook. But anyways, for me, Aurora screams Aurora Borealis, the northern lights, which are basically only visible at night. So that's kind of how I'm logicking my way into adding this to my TBR. It's nice and short. And this is one that I got from a blind date with a book box from Ian over at Inglenook Books, so I'm even more excited to try this. Next up, prompt 9 is Buzzcut Season by Lord, and this is to pick up a book featuring a character in some kind of military training or in a war. And for this, if my library hold of this comes in on time, I'll probably try and get Sunrise on the Reaping in, which is the newest installment in the Hunger Games series following Haymitch's Games, which was the second quarter quell. But if my library loan for that does not come in, my library loan for Onyx Storm, the 3rd book in the 4th Wing series or Empyrean series, should definitely come in, so I will slot that here. I have a feeling I'm going to end up picking up Onyx Storm for this, but on the off chance I do get Sunrise on the Reaping first, I will probably prioritize that. Prompt 10 is My Life by Billy Joel, and that is to read a memoir or a book written in first person. And I do enjoy the occasional memoir, so I decided this was a good excuse to pick one up. And I have decided I want to try out A River in Darkness. And I think the author's name is Masaji Ishikawa, something close to that. I may be butchering the pronunciation, but again, this is one I'll make sure to learn the pronunciation on when I pick up the audio. And this is a memoir story of a man who has defected or escaped from North Korea. And I have read one of those before, I read In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park, and I really enjoyed reading about her life experience. So I'm curious to kind of get a similar experience from someone else who's experienced it and see what kind of similarities I can find or what differences I notice. And yeah, I have a feeling I'll be very interested in this through the reading experience. So I'm excited to check it out, even though I know it will be harrowing and probably heavy to read. On to the Team Nala prompts, we have prompt 11, which is All In by Samuel J. And that is to read a book you've committed to read. So this could be like anything you said you were going to read in April, anything you just need to read for whatever reason. And for me, I'm going to use this as an excuse to pick up Shutter Island by Dennis Lehane. And this was chosen for me to read by Ian over at Ian the Reader. So a while ago, Jake and I were doing a thing where we would pick books for Ian to read, and he would kind of figure out who could recommend better books. But once that was all wrapped up, we decided, okay, it's time for Ian to pick books for us to read, and this is one of his picks. So I'm committed to read it for that reason, and I decided April was going to be the time. Prompt 12 is Obsidian by Trevor Hall, and that is to read a book with either mystical elements or Indigenous rep. And Nala has described mystical elements as like magic sort of relating to nature or the elements, so like animals, or think like elemental magic a little bit. I have decided to use this for Indigenous rep and pick up a sequel that I've been meaning to get to forever, and I would like to pick up Moon of the Turning Leaves by Wabishi Grice. And not only did I enjoy the first book, Moon of the Crusted Snow, but this is a local author for my hometown, and there are things in the synopsis here that are sort of hinting that we're sort of headed towards my hometown for the setting of this. And so I am looking forward to this even more. However, one of the biggest things that stood out about book one for me was the setting, like the northern, remote, isolated Indigenous reserve. So it'll be really interesting to see what stands out to me about this one. And of course, this is like post-apocalyptic, so while it may be kind of in my hometown area, it'll be really interesting to see kind of how he's imagined this scenario. So yeah, I am definitely looking forward to this, and I'm sure I will find something to like. I just know that it's going to be a very different experience than the first book in the series. Prompt 13 is St. Elmo's Fire, Man in Motion by John Parr, and this is to read a book featuring a character either pursuing their dream or fulfilling their destiny in some way. And for this, I've decided to slot in Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. And I can't even remember at this point of filming like why I thought that this would fit the prompt. Like, it's got to have something to do with the synopsis. I'm assuming it's going to be a female character chasing their career dream, because she definitely writes females in STEM, and they're definitely a very motivated type of characters, and she tends to kind of use similar character archetypes for all her books. So yeah, I'm sure that when I planned this TBR, I had a solid reason pointing from the synopsis that makes it fit this prompt, but right now I can't remember. But yes, I am excited to get to this one. I have read and enjoyed several of her contemporary romances, and yeah, I'm expecting to love this one too. Prompt 14 is Desert Rose by Sting, and this is to read a book with either beautiful prose or lush detailed descriptions. And this is not something I gravitate towards, so I really had to think about what I was going to slot here. I tend to really prefer straightforward prose, and I don't visualize while I read, so lots of descriptions in a book will turn me off. But there was one author that came to mind that I had enjoyed previously that sort of fits into this beautiful prose scenario, and that is Elizabeth Acevedo. And I have read 2 of her young adult contemporary books, but there's a third one that I have not yet read, and so I decided to slot that here, and that's going to be With the Fire on High. I have heard really, really good things about this one, so I'm expecting to enjoy it. So prompt 15 is Uptown Girl by Billy Joel, and that is to read a book featuring characters from different walks of life coming together. And from what I can remember of Freak the Mighty, that book definitely fits this scenario. Now, I can't remember if the sequel, Max the Mighty, also fits that, but I've decided to pick that up. And if for some reason it doesn't fit that, I will slot Freak the Mighty here and Max the Mighty into prompt 1, because it is in the same series as a Captain's Fave, so it would count for that. But yeah, so I want to read Max the Mighty because I never got to read that one, and I want to see how the story continues. Into the Team Nico prompts, prompt 16 is Widower by Make Them Suffer, and that's to read a book with a character who has either been widowed or lost a very close loved one to them. And in the month of April, for the John Mars Book Club, we are going to be reading The Passengers, and this is going to be a reread for me, and definitely this fits more than one character in here. This is one of my all-time favorite thrillers. I hope that for whoever joins in the read along, they really find things to love about this and enjoy it as well. And this one just keeps you on your toes, is action-packed and pulse-pounding. But I also love that it gradually kind of changes your perspective on things in the book. So it's just a really fun reading experience as well. And yeah, looking forward to my reread of this now that I know a lot of things. Prompt 17 is Walk Like a Man by Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, and that is to read a book featuring a father figure. So earlier in the video, I did mention how Ian chose some books for Jake and I to read, and I decided I was going to slot another one of Ian's picks for me here, and that is going to be Pines, the first book in the Wayward Pine series by Blake Crouch. And straight away from the synopsis of this one, you have a father figure who has lost contact with his wife and son, who's trying to get a hold of them. And so definitely I thought, oh, perfect. I will use that as an excuse to slot that in. And I have previously read and enjoyed 3 Blake Crouch books, so I'm looking forward to getting into more of his like thrillery type stuff instead of more of his hard sci-fi. I definitely think I'll have a good time with this, and it's nice and short, so I figured perfect for the readathon. Prompt 18 is Broken Survivors by Beast in Black, and this is to read a book that somehow explores a character's past trauma. So this could be kind of a scenario where they're telling you about hard things they've been through, or it could also be more in the lens of they're healing from things they've been through, and it's more of like a positive, upbeat kind of thing. But there is a memoir that I have been really interested in reading about, and that is going to be Sherry Frankie's memoir that just came out. It's The House of My Mother. If you don't know about this, there was a sort of like family blog channel on YouTube called 8 Passengers or Passenger 8, something like that. And essentially the mother and like the family counselor were arrested on, I think, like child abuse or child neglect charges, and this is the memoir of the oldest daughter in the family. So I'm definitely interested to see what she has to say about sort of growing up in that like family blogging environment, and also just kind of get more information and detail on like what all happened, because I don't really know the full story. I just sort of know the broader strokes. But yeah, so this I'm sure will be a hard one to read because it deals with children in a bad situation. But on the other hand, I am very interested, and I've heard from people that the book is very good. So I'm definitely curious to check it out. Prompt 19 is Snow Brigade by Mew, and that is to read a book featuring a character doing whatever they can to help somebody that they care about. And I am going to use this prompt as an excuse to slot in our April Thrill, Chill, or Kill book club pick, so our thriller or horror pick. And in the month of April, that is going to be And There He Kept Her by Joshua Molling. And I do know that the basic premise of this is that there's a detective kind of moving back to his hometown, or being back in his hometown, and he's helping a relative try and locate their missing child. So definitely this is going to be a scenario where he's going to be doing everything he can to help somebody that he cares about. And I'm definitely intrigued by it, so I need to raffo. And the final prompt, prompt 20, is Scenes from an Italian Restaurant by Billy Joel. And that is to read a book that includes time jumps of some kind. And a few of us over on the Discord have decided to jump into a reread of the Green Rider series leading up to the release of book 8. And we will be on the second book, First Rider's Call, in the month of April. And this definitely includes some time jumps. There is some story stuff towards the end of this one that fits this prompt perfectly. And I am really looking forward to my reread and just continuing with the series, because kind of where I left off, the series starts to play into things I more am typically gravitating towards. And I really enjoyed book 2 and 3 as it was. They were 5-star reads for me. So definitely looking forward to getting back to this and continuing on with the series. And while it's chunky, these do read pretty quickly. Like, they didn't have a ton of density from what I can remember. So I'm not overly worried that I have this on my Readathon TBR, even though it is a little chunky. So that was it for all of the books I plan to read in the month of April. Definitely there are a few chunky ones that are kind of subject to change if I can find some shorter options of things I really want to pick up, or maybe I have a library hold come in that kind of throws my plan. or, you know, maybe something I was planning on picking up from the library won't come in time. So yeah, we will figure all that out in April, but as of right now, this is my plan. There is still time to sign up for the readathon if you want. I'll have all the information for it linked down below, and all of it can also be found in our Discord, the Bookish Drummer Discord. There's a heading in there for Battle of the Bands 5, and there's a channel, resources, graphics, and information, or whatever it's called, that has all of the good details. So yeah, last day to sign up for that is March 31st at midnight Eastern, or whenever I go to bed that night. So if you want to go ahead and join us in April, definitely make sure to check that out. Let me know down below in the comments, what are you most excited for on your April TBR? And if you're doing the readathon, what are you most looking forward to picking up for that, and what prompt is it for? Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe on your way out if you want to, and have a great day. Bye!